Hey, it's me, Wild Neptune, and this is the fourth part of our World Arena Season 5 tier list. Today is going to be the Light Element units. However, before that, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me at Twitch at twitch.tv/WildNeptune. If you missed any of the previous parts, they will be down in the description below. However, let's go over the tiers quickly. Dominant, units where the meta, the drafts, the bans, the pre-bans probably revolve around these units up here. Meta, units that are going to be the bulk of most drafts you see. Alternative picks, these are pick substitutes. Maybe something's banned, maybe needs some sort of redundancy. Specialized, units that are going to be purely counter picks most of the time, or maybe only used in particular comps. Out of the meta / meme, units that might have been strong in the past but aren't right now, or units that are just, funny. And then not usually viable, normally units that don't have enough upside to see usage in any case. Now, with that being said, let's go. We will start off with Ambitious Tywin. And right now, Ambitious Tywin, I would say, is a meta level hero. At higher ranks, he's being used a lot more often than he was, to the point where it is getting pretty annoying. A Tywin is one of the most toxic units in the entire game. And his rise in usage, I think, is going to start gravitating more players to either just banning him out, right, in a pre-ban, or building more of their units with high ER than they are right now. That's how good and problematic I think he is. Broman, unfortunately, is too RNG to really be used for his use case as the buffer. Celeste, also, I would say, is largely out of the meta. I know some Cleave players might still use her occasionally, as she has an AoE and a speed buff. However, I think most players believe she's a little bit too low value versus replacement. Fighter Maya, with Arby largely gone from the meta, and Arbys that are used being more degen, Fighter Maya has really lost her big target that she wanted to counter. Another light knight, though, is going to be Crimson Armin, who purely by damage mitigation is the queen of the knight slot. Her invincibility and immunity can also be really clutch if you get to use it at the right time. Carmen, just a very solid pick, especially into Cleave, as a lot of Cleave teams will be banning things like Fallen Cecilia. DJ Bassar, I'll put him specialized. Honestly, he's really similar to Destina and Ray, where even in scenarios where you want to pick him, he's often not something you can actually pick, as he does use up one of your support slots, and a lot of times you need a DPS as your last pick too. So Faithless Lytica also is going to be largely out of the meta. Just too many things punish her as an opener in Cleave, and there are just better openers too, like Pavel, for instance. One of those things that counter Athletica is G-Purgus, and he's going to be I would say, right now, a specialized pick. He's definitely much more comp dependent than he was before, where before you used him as like an attack buffer and something to like punish the AoE damage dealers. Now, with AoE damage dealers doing so much damage and things being really aggressive overall, it's actually hard to pick G-Purgus, because even if you do get those AoEs, it doesn't matter if the rest of your team is dead, right? And that's one of the things right now, where, okay, yes, I have G-Purgus, but they have a May Chloe and a Landy, and they're just gonna like attack buff like Soulburn and kill me, right? That's basically what G-Purgus has to deal with these days. And also the fact that they're just better attack buffers, right? Again, Emilia, Maid, stuff like that. So, Gloomy Rain. Now, honestly, I could have pre-done this and just put it here, but Gloomy Rain, of course, is my favorite character in the entire game. She is great, but not that great for RTA. So, Judge Kisei. Right now, Judge Kisei is not viable. And she was really never in the meta. I want to say, I think, if I remember correctly, a launch Judge Kisei in World Arena was only a thing for like really briefly in like season 1, and then people found out how to counter it, and other stuff like that happened. So now Judge Kisei is getting a skin, and traditionally, the units that have been getting the skins for World Arena that have been weak have been buffed. So I do think a Judge Kisei buff is coming. Or rework. I don't really know what they're going to do with her. But she might not be here for too much longer. But right now, she's basically unusable. LRK is going to be more of an alternative pick. Maybe specialized. But he is also seeing a little more usage overall. Not as much as a Tywin, anywhere near a Tywin usage, but definitely a pick that you can use. We'll put in specialized, because honestly, he's going to be used a lot to counter a Tywin or things like SSB, right? And it doesn't really fit any other strategy at the moment. Again, still very strong, right? This doesn't mean he's a weak hero. Just that his usage isn't as prominent as before. LQC is going to be another specialized hero in the anti-dark element category. Again, things like FCC, A Ravi, of course. And if those strategies become more common, she can move up a little bit, right? It's just that other DPS have a little more value than she does in more cases, which is why she isn't quite up here. Dorse is going to be right now out of the meta. Again, Dorse is good for defensive teams. It's just that you often don't need all of what Doris does, and things like Emilia is just much better. Watsushuri is, I believe, the preferred speed imprint on a cleave team, and this is because her S3 is very valuable. May Chloe is going to be the first hero here in a dominant category. Very strong. Her revive with the cleanse is really good. She's really good into something like AOL Angelica. If you have a guaranteed book, because you can soul burn for the extra turn and then cleanse off with the S3. Right? So, really good into that. I'm just good into a lot of stuff. Just having an attack buff to buff your DPS and everything is so valuable with what the rest of kit does. And her stun at 40% is probably the most unnecessary buff they've ever given a unit. Spez. Spez is a meme. Let's be honest here. Even against like a May Chloe composition, Spez requires so much setup to be good, and when it goes off, yes, like you'll probably win, but there are a lot of times where he just won't, And the rest of his kit doesn't really make up for the fact that he is so reliant on what the rest of your team is going to do. T-Surin is going to be a specialized pick. There are cases where T-Surin is going to be very good, like anti-cleave. She's still relatively strong against AOL Angelica. She's actually okay, and she can cleanse off those buffs and those debuffs too if she's hit a couple of times after that. But because of all the AoE in the meta that is like high damage AoE, she is not the easiest unit to draft right now. Solitaria is going to be a specialized pick, mostly against things like SSB, I would say. Very similar to Rowana and her usage. Really suffers from similar issues where she often is a pick that you can't choose. Now, I do think Solitaria is slightly better than Rowana overall. Now, I have never seen Solitaria picked at all this season, even when I have SSB. I have seen Rowana picked against me when I picked SSB, and part of it is because I think that people just don't have Solitaria. But if they did, I still don't think they would pick her. So, Mursa. Kind of a meme right now. Mursa's base stats are just too low, I think, for her to see any real usage right now. Silverblade Everminta, very similar to Dizzy's issues, where debuffers that don't have a cleanse will... Not cleanse, sorry. A strip often don't see use, and SVA falls into that category. Blaze Dingo. Somebody must still Dingo cleave. I haven't seen one in a long time, so... But now, we'll get to Ruel. Ruel is going to be a meta hero. You won't see her all the time, but when you do see her, expect to have a very long match. From what I've noticed, a lot of players that will draft her in their teams will pre-ban Landy, and if that happens, I recommend that you first pick Spectre Tenebria, as that is almost always the DPS that they want to choose for that composition. So, just a little hint there. A Sage Ball, I would say, will be another specialized pick. You might notice that the light element has a lot of relatively strong specialized counter type units in their roster, and Sage Ball can be used as like a filler for a speed contest, as a pseudo like bruiser like debuffer with a burst DPS hit with the S3, anti-cleave too. So a lot of good utility usage for Sage Ball, but not always the best at what you might want him to do. Okay, now we get to AOL Angelica, and I would say right now she is a dominant hero. A very common pre-ban, and her counters are few and far between, and the things that do counter her either require additional help, like Soulburn May Chloe, who needs a book holder, or are just not that good against a lot of other things, like, say, Assassin Coley to just burst her down, who also needs a book most of the time, and might not be that strong against like the rest of her draft, right? So definitely, I would say one of the most problematic units in the game right now. And of course we have Bellion, who is not out yet, but I'm going to preemptively put her into dominant tier. And just the fact that she erases book souls is very strong. This means that Cleve has one more thing they have to think about when they're drafting, pre-banning, stuff like that. But just not getting souls in a regular battle, if she does okay damage, just making it so that like a tank team can't get souls until she dies is really strong. It means that they can build souls to do things like soul burn, Ruel for the AoE heal. They can't get souls to do things like soul burn like a specter, right? Multiple times to push for a win. It makes not only in my opinion, the cleave strategies like worse overall. It makes like the tank up strategies worse too. You can do things too like they can no longer soul burn landies because they don't have the souls to do that. They can't do things like soul burn a Straze maybe. Even though the Straze would probably kill you anyway. But you get the point, right? She does a lot of things against more comps than just cleave, in my opinion. Now again, this is going to be dependent on how much damage she can do. If she just kind of stands there and does nothing at all, but does not get the enemy souls, But I do think she's going to be a force, even if she doesn't actually make it onto the field. So that is the light element tier list for Season 5. Do you agree with this list? If you don't, tell me down below why. Or tell me what a great list this is down below too. That's always helpful. Anyway, I'm Neptune. It's been a good one. Nep out.